Hi everyone, my name is Karan Batra and welcome to FinOps Bytes brought to you by CloudKeeper. With this interesting interview series, we are trying to bring some of the FinOps thought leaders to share their insights on some basic but burning topics around FinOps. Without much ado, let's meet our guest for today, Dieter Matzion. He is a member of Roku's cloud technology and infrastructure team, supporting cloud FinOps across AWS, GCP, Azure. Also, he is a FinOps ambassador. Hi, Dieter. Welcome to our FinOps Bytes.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. Pleasure to be here.
Same here, Dieter. For our larger audience, it would be great if you could just tell us more about your background and how your journey has been in the FinOps space.
Yeah, I have started working in FinOps in 2013 at companies like Google, then Netflix, Intuit, and most recently Roku. I have been a FinOps ambassador for, I believe, 2 years now since the program started.
That was a quick brief about you. So I'll right away jump into the question and answer part that we have. So Dieter, I would like to now kickstart the discussion with a very basic question that we have. What comes to your mind when you hear the term FinOps?
Yeah, so when it comes to FinOps, I have the official definition here, right? FinOps is an operational framework and cultural practice which maximizes the business value of cloud, enables timely data-driven decision-making, and creates financial accountability through collaboration between engineering, finance, and business teams. So the word FinOps is a portmanteau, which is a word blending of finance and DevOps, stressing the communications and collaboration between business and engineering teams. Now, cloud financial management has been in existence since the advent of cloud technology in 2006. The FinOps Foundation has developed a comprehensive and repeatable framework known as Cloud FinOps for maximizing the return of an organization's cloud investment.
Thank you, Dieter, for that great definition. I would say that was a clear explanation of FinOps to someone who doesn't have a single definition to the concepts. You have been in the FinOps domain for quite some time now. I'm sure there would have been challenges in your cost optimization journey. Could you highlight some of them and also would love to understand how have you overcome those challenges?
Of course, in cloud computing, the basic formula is rate times usage equals cost. FinOps focuses mainly on two ways to lower cost: rate and usage optimization. When it comes to rate optimization, it is about actions that can be done centrally, which makes them easier. For example, this includes using enterprise deals, joining programs that help move to the cloud faster, getting special pricing, and taking advantage of discounts for committing to use certain resources. You can also save money by choosing reserved instances or special discounts for committing to use resources over time. When it comes to usage optimization, it is more complex because it needs engineers to work on it in different parts of the company. Even though the central team can suggest ways to use resources better, engineers need to make these changes happen. This could mean using different types of processors, managing how long data is stored, making sure you're not using more resources than you need, turning off resources when they're not in use, or changing how workloads are set up to be more efficient. These steps are important for making sure the cloud services fit what the company really needs.
So, Dieter, rate optimization mainly is a simple strategy, as you say, using discount pricing, savings plan, and usage optimization focuses more on the infra level changes that one needs to do. So, you talked about rate optimization and usage optimization as two ways to actually think of FinOps, and these two areas majorly takes place where FinOps as a culture gets in and you use rate optimization and usage optimization to optimize cost on the cloud. So could you please elaborate any challenges that you have faced in the organization or currently or in past where rate optimization has worked for you and some challenges where rate optimization is not something you would go on with and usage optimization has helped you in those challenges?
Yeah, let's take a look at rate optimization, right? Rate optimization are things like enterprise discount programs, migration acceleration programs, private pricing agreements, and of course, other savings instruments like committed use discounts, right? So on the AWS side, we have quite a selection of things, right? We have first savings plans that come in multiple flavors. We have compute savings plans, instant savings plans, and also SageMaker savings plans. When it comes to
correct.
reserved instances, there is also a vast array of tools on the AWS side, right? First of all, we have standard reserved instances. These come with a capacity guarantee. So when you request that standard reserved instance, you could get an insufficient capacity error, right? Because the reservation itself comes with a capacity guarantee. Then you have convertible reserved instances. These allow you to do modifications either through the AWS console or through the AWS API. And then you have regional reserved instances. These don't come with a capacity guarantee. So when you create a regional reserved instance, that creation will always be successful. Now, there's combinations of those, right? You could have a convertible standard reserved instance. You could have a convertible regional reserved instance, and so forth, right? There's also reserved instances for multiple products. EC2 is the first one for cloud compute. RDS is another one. OpenSearch is another one. And you can get for Elasticache and for Redshift as well. There's also a prepayment for DynamoDB and for DynamoDB Accelerator, DAX. So there's quite a selection, and it's a very complex field on AWS. And on the Azure side, there are a myriad of cloud products that support reservations. For example, you can get reservations for blob storage on Azure, which you can't on AWS. You can, on the GCP side, you can get committed use discounts for SSDs, which you can't for AWS. GCP also has committed use discounts and flexible committed use discounts, their savings plan equivalent, right? So this entire area is a very complex area. My suggestion here is, if you just get started with this, make some uncontroversial small purchases and observe over time. See what the effect is of those purchases. Most cloud vendors will allow you to cancel a purchase within like a 7 to 14 day range if you made a mistake. And it's easy to make mistakes with these purchases, right?
Yes.
For example, on the AWS side, when you look at RIs for EC2, you need to look at the region, the zone if you buy a non-regional RI, the instance type, the instance size, tenancy, and the network as well, a property, right? If you get one of those properties incorrect, the reserved instance will not apply to your usage, right? It will go unused. So then if you want to enhance your practice when it comes to these committed use discounts, my suggestion is to use savings plans to cover about 80% of your compute cost, right? And once you want to excel in this capability, my first suggestion is to go and use a third-party vendor to help you manage RIs on top of the savings plan, to basically cover that remaining 20%, because there is fluctuations in your usage during the 24 hours of a day and during the week, right? You may have in the morning online analytical processing workloads, and then in the evening you have batch workloads, right? So usage shifts during the day. And these vendors make adjustments on an hourly basis, or at least multiple times a day, to that usage to make the reserved instances follow your usage pattern, right? Building this capability in-house will be extremely challenging. So far, I have not seen an open source project that does that. There's many other open source projects that help, like Cloud Custodian from Capital One, but no iManagement tool has been open sourced yet, right? So that tells me that is a challenging area to start engineering and to operate in, right?
That brings me to my next question. And how has FinOps changed the way you manage your cloud resources? And what impact has it created on your cloud cost?
Yeah, so FinOps has been a concept for a long time, but we used to call it cloud financial management. In the beginning, people figured out on their own how to save money in the cloud. There wasn't a set guide or a community for support. I remember once buying a reserved instance and then realizing we made a mistake and had to ask the vendor to cancel it. Now, the FinOps Foundation offers a clear and repeatable framework. This helps FinOps practitioners to understand, step by step, how to optimize cloud costs If you run into a tough issue, you can quickly get advice from the FinOps community through their Slack channels. This kind of support didn't exist before. People don't have to make guesses anymore. They can follow proven methods to achieve success. The biggest impact of FinOps is its community and the detailed guidance to provide for performing FinOps tasks at various levels of expertise.
Thank you, Dieter, for that answer. I can't agree more that FinOps Foundation has been quite instrumental in aligning and organizing this complex mechanism of cloud cost optimization. Also, the community part is also there. However, even though the core concept of FinOps has been around for a long time, the way of handling and managing these costs have been ever evolving. Recently and specifically post pandemic, many third party FinOps vendors have come in the market trying to solve some or other parts or all parts of the cost management challenges. So, Dieter, what do you think? How crucial has their role become now? And what are some specific areas where they are adding significant value according to you?
Yeah, that's a good point. Organizations new to the cloud often lack experience with cloud native technologies. This means both leaders and engineers need to learn specific skills for effective cloud operation. This is where third-party FinOps partners are useful as they can speed up cloud adoption. These partners can assist in several key areas, such as cloud cost reporting, managing commitment-based discounts automatically, detecting unusual cloud spending, and forecasting future cloud costs. For instance, cloud-native tools might not categorize cost according to a company's internal structure. A third-party tool that can offer such detailed cost breakdowns is vital for assigning expenses to the correct business units, cost centers, teams, and engineers. Another example is the automated management of commitment-based discounts, where creating an internal solution could be overly challenging and not central to the business's main operations.
So, well, you talked about a lot of things where third party vendors can help, and an organization which is new to cloud adoption and they are very early in the cloud adoption journey. So, well, looking at complexities of entire cloud usage and cost alignment, it does make sense for organization to consult some third party FinOps specialists or vendors who can tackle the plethora of cost saving mechanism and at the same time not digress from their core business value. One thought here that starting early in the cloud adoption and doing things internally, do you see a new startup or new company growing their product on cloud? Do you see collaborating with a third party vendor rather than having a dedicated person internally or maybe doing things internally on the infra side? So do you see third party vendor as an extended arm initially, or you recommend that initially a startup or a company who is growing in the cloud should do things around FinOps internally first, and if they don't see any value in that, then they can definitely shift to a cloud FinOps specialist or a vendor?
I think it depends on the organization and the business focus, right? Everything that we
Okay.
do has to provide a business value. So if your business value is, let's say you're OpenAI and you are, having research scientists on your team with $1 million annual salary, right? Maybe you don't want to worry about how much you're spending or how much you're saving in the cloud, right? There's other priorities for your business. You need to build the next large language model, and the investors are giving you money, hand over fist, and so cloud spend may not be a priority, right? So the situation is different for each organization, but my recommendation is to have at least one person part-time dedicated to FinOps, and that person then can make decisions on where they need help, right? The business decision should be driven by a business case, right? Is it forecasting? Is it anomaly detection? Is it waste? Is it RI management, right? And do we want to build this in-house? Do we want to manage this in-house? Or do we want a third-party vendor to do that for us? And how does this look like, right? How does pricing look like? So if your organization is, well-funded, has billions of dollars in funding, such as the case, for example, with OpenAI, right? Then spending money on a third-party vendor is maybe a non-issue for you, right? If you are very frugal, if your funding is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, and you need to build something fairly quickly, then you don't have the money simply to go and spend on other things, right? And so in that case, you may want to do those things in-house rather than, outsourcing them just because you don't have the funding.
Sure, Dieter. Thanks for answering that in great detail. Quick question here, Dieter. Since FinOps is more of a cultural thing that comes into an organization, not a platform or not anything else. So, how do you see organization in new to their journey to cloud can adopt FinOps as a practice if they are just starting in like adopting cloud platforms like maybe AWS, GCP or Azure? How they can take small step towards adopting FinOps as a practice internally?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and I'm being asked that frequently, right? Being a FinOps ambassador, that is what I do. I advocate for that FinOps cultural shift, right? First, you need to understand that FinOps is not just a bunch of processes or a framework, right? Fundamentally, it is a culture shift where the engineers take cost as yet another dimension that they need to optimize for, right? And if you're new to cloud, if you operate in a data center before, right? Data centers work slightly differently. You purchase hardware for a 3-year time period, typically, maybe even a 5-year time period. So your workload will grow into the hardware over that time period, that amortization period, right? In the cloud, that is not necessary. You don't need to get a compute instance that is several times larger than your current workload because you can always switch to a larger instance later, right? So this shift of mind is what is required for the adoption of FinOps, right? To get started, start small, right? Have a single person that is dedicated to FinOps, maybe even part-time, right? And it's always better to run FinOps as a central team rather than decentralized, right? And then that person needs to take an inventory of all the things that are happening within the engineering body, the workloads, how the cloud is being used, those kind of things, right? And then based on that inventory, you stack rank it. You basically sort it with like, hey, this is the largest item on top, right? And this could look differently for each organization, right? For some organizations that operate in the cloud for quite some time, waste could be an issue, right? So maybe that becomes your priority. Or you just started with cloud and you are looking to renew your enterprise agreement, then forecasting becomes a priority, right? Because you need to know the dollar amount that you can commit to during the enterprise agreement renewal process, right? Another thing that could be a priority is maybe anomalies, right? Engineers experiment in the cloud. There is a lot of changes, and the cloud, it scales very easily, right? For example, if you do a lifecycle transition in S3 and you ask AWS S3 as a service to transition, 3 billion objects, it will do so instantly. However, there is a transition fee of 1 cent per 1,000 objects, right? So you may be faced with a bill of $50,000 with that one-click action, right? So paying attention to anomalies could be another thing that you need to focus on.
Since many developments have happened in the FinOps space and it continues to be on the upward trajectory, what is that one thing you're excited about and think that it can be a game changer in the FinOps landscape in 2024?
Yeah, so in 2023, the introduction of large language models, or LLMs, showed us their specific uses in speeding up FinOps tasks. Now we can upload documents, spreadsheets, and even images and ask these LLMs about their content. For instance, you can upload an entire book and create a private generative pre-trained transformer, or GPT. Instead of reading the book, you can simply ask the GPT questions about it. This changes our approach from a linear one to a more focused one. I believe in 2024, we will see an increase in AI agents. An agent is a script that can interact with websites either directly or through application programming interfaces or APIs. This will help us automate tasks that were previously done manually, making our time usage more efficient. In FinOps, I expect to see cloud vendor-specific agents with abilities in analysis, anomaly detection, and forecasting. For example, rather than navigating through a cloud provider's console for information, a user could ask the LLM for the top 3 engineering teams that have increased their cloud spending compared to their historic usage. These agents could also provide advanced forecasts, like identifying the top 3 workloads that are hardest to predict over the next 12 months. Such an analysis used to be time-consuming, manual, and open to interpretation. Using AI agents with LLMs will unlock new capabilities that were previously unavailable.
Great. So, according to you, AI agents, AI as a whole, will play a significant role in FinOps as well as it is playing in other domains. Yes, Dieter. So, you actually talked about automation AI coming in FinOps. So, if you could just give us some use cases how automation has helped companies or organization or your current companies or previous companies in adopting FinOps as a practice or helping organization cut down their cost or in their cost optimization journey.
Yeah, so there are multiple use cases for automation that come to mind. One is, of course, the automated RI management, right? That you have
Correct.
your savings plans maybe at an 80% mark, right? And then maybe a third-party vendor is managing the RIs on top of that, right? The automation can help you to then follow workload pattern changes during the course of a 24-hour day, right? In that case, if you use a third-party vendor, there are two types of vendors, right? One where the recommendations are automated. So the vendor has a recommendation engine that tells them what changes to make for reserved instances, right? But then the changes are being made manually by people. And maybe that can be done multiple times a day, but the better solution here is to use a vendor that has the reserved instance changes fully automated so that they can detect usage pattern changes during the course of the day and can make those adjustments to follow those usage changes, right? Another automation that is very common, right, is reporting. The cloud native tools have certain reporting abilities, but they are very shallow. For example, on Amazon Web Services, you cannot group by two items, right? You can only group by one item. So if I want to group by account and then by service, I can't do that. And the other cloud vendors are very similar, right? That their reporting is relatively constrained. So, higher reporting capabilities are required, then it becomes useful to use a third-party vendor to fulfill your reporting needs. So that is another area, right? Then when it comes to anomaly detection, AWS has anomaly detection, right? And it works fairly well. GCP, I believe, is planning on some anomaly detection, right? And Azure, I'm not super sure if it's available cloud native. I don't believe I have seen it. They just showed trend graphs, right, for the most part. So anomaly detection can become another automation area that is useful, right? Forecasting, again, is a very complex area, right? Because yes, if you take your total cloud spend, right, let's say it's $1 million, and then you forecast it all in 2 years, it's $2 million. That's one thing, right? But your forecast will be the variance of your forecast will be very high, which is not good, right? You want a low variance. Typically, at a crawl maturity, you want a variance of 20%. At the walk maturity, you want 10%, and run maturity, you want 5% or better, right? So in this case, a third-party vendor that has forecasting capabilities, right, that looks on the workload level or the stock keeping unit, the SKU level, right, and does a forecast for each individual workload, right? And you may have thousands or tens of thousands of workloads, right? And this tool does a statistic analysis for each workload individually and then rolls it up into a total forecast, right? That is another area where automation can become useful, right? And lastly, waste identification, right? And remediation.
Sure.
So, especially if you have been in the cloud for some time, several years, right? Engineers, it's like a kitchen where you have an industrial kitchen with multiple cooks, right? You need to clean up every day. It will just get messy. It can't be helped. So engineers will create waste. For example, if they do an experiment and the experiment is unsuccessful, they will instantly terminate it, and so that no one can see their failure, right? But if the experiment is successful, they will keep it around for weeks to show it to their colleagues. And of course, it incurs a cost during that time, right?
Yes.
So being able to see waste by business owner or by engineering team, highest dollar amount on top, that is a critical capability, right? To then identify, this person is responsible for X amount of dollar waste, right? And automation can be useful there as well. And then waste remediation. For example, if you have an elastic block store volume, which is essentially a virtual disk drive that is attached to a compute instance, you can unattach the volume and the volume will stay there forever and incur a cost. So these volumes need to be cleaned up. If they essentially orphaned resources, they need to be cleaned up. So maybe the automation can help to take a snapshot and then terminate the volume, send an email to the owner, and then terminate the snapshot after 90 days or something like that and send another email to the owner, right? So these are areas where automation can be very successful.
Thank you, Dieter. As you rightly mentioned that RIOps is something that can be taken care of by automation, AI, and the secondly is monitoring, third is reporting, and obviously the cloud wastage and forecasting. These
Yeah.
are some areas automation and AI can come in and help organizations remove that redundant task of going again and again and understanding those anomalies and trying to figure it out. Automation can come handy.
Exactly.
So, as you said that the term FinOps is ever evolving. Earlier, you used to say that it is cloud financial management. Now it is FinOps. And then there is a term coming up like FinDevOps. So it is more of every team collaborating towards taking that ownership of cost as individual. Not
Yes.
just taking care of the infra part, developing a product, but making sure that they are adding value in terms of cost. They're not increasing their expenditure
Mm-hmm.
because if you have, I would say, on-site data center, it is more of a investment one time. But if you are on cloud, you are doing investment on cloud day by day, so it is hard to monitor it as well. But
Mm-hmm.
to keep a track of every anomaly, every resource that is spun up, it is also a challenge for the financial as well as DevOps teams to keep a real time track on these activities. So do you see any new thing coming up, or I would say new thing you have discussed with other FinOps leaders around the world in last 2 to 3 months? You would like to highlight any of them?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of outreach with different organizations, and we talk about their organization specific needs. Something that I have seen for very large organizations with large cloud footprints, that capacity becomes an issue. They simply can't get the compute instances that they need. And so their management of the cloud resources is completely different from someone that can just scale, use auto scaling during the day, right? In these cases, then on-demand capacity reservations are being utilized. We haven't talked about those. On-demand capacity reservation is essentially a purely financial construct where you reserve the compute capacity and you start paying for it whether or not the instances are actually running. So that's just very interesting, right? So for example, let's say you have 1,000 instances and you need to shut them down and start them back up again. To not lose the capacity, you would put an on-demand capacity reservation in place for 1,000 instances. Do you shut down? Do you start up? Everything runs smoothly. But then you need to not forget to remove the on-demand capacity reservation. Because if you ever scale
Correct.
down to 500, it will keep the high watermark at the 1,000 mark, and you will keep paying for the 1,000. So there is, a lot of different things that organizations have to struggle with. For example, if workloads are moving from AWS to GCP, each cloud vendor works completely differently. There,
That's
there is
correct.
some similarities. Yes, they have blob storage, but the blob storage on the GCP side, on Google Cloud, works completely different. If you have cold storage object, you can access that cold storage object within tens of milliseconds, and it will be available to you right away. However, then you need to wait until it ages out back into cold storage. So that waiting period, you need to pay for that, for the warmer storage, for the hotter storage options until it ages out naturally, right? On the AWS side, the cold storage, you need to sort of rehydrate it, bring it back into a staging area, and the object stays in that staging area for some time, about a month, where you can access it, and then that staging area gets dismantled again. Each organization has their own needs and their own challenges.
Dieter, you rightly mentioned that it is a one time activity, but it takes a lot of effort to do commitment on these cloud hypervisors. So hyperscalers have a lot of bunch of RI savings plan, but it is very essential that you don't just go and undercommit or overcommit. You need to have that balance of on demand and commitment reservations. I would say you have rightly mentioned that is something that every organization looks out for, and they
Mhm.
have DevOps team, FinOps team that is always look out for that minimum balance they can maintain between on demand and the reserve capacity.
Yeah, what I can add to that is a good way to balance those things is with a combination of savings plans and reserved instances, where possible. Especially on the AWS side, you have the convertible reserved instances, and automation can help there greatly. So let's say you have your on-demand spend covered with savings plans up to 80%. We mentioned before that you can then use convertible reserved instances to follow your usage pattern during the 24-hour day. And you need to automate this. You can't just like do it manually, right? Because if you do it manually, maybe you can do it once a week. And while this is not too bad, if it's automated, that works much better, right? Because it can
Yes,
make
correct.
actually changes as your workload shift during the day. But when it comes to convertible reserved instances, sometimes people ask me, why don't we just go with savings plans? Why do we use convertible reserved instances, right? The reason being that a savings plan, if you have a $100 per hour commitment, that commitment can never be changed. It can never become $90 per hour, right? With a convertible reserved instance, what you can do is, let's say you bought a 3-year lease term, right? And 18 months have been amortized on it, right? So you are about at the halfway point of that convertible reserved instance. Now, what you can do is you can actually stretch the duration of the convertible reserved instance to the maximum 3-year window, which means that, let's say it was a $100 commitment, you now reduce the commitment to $50. So that convertible reserved instance, in opposition to the savings plan, allows you to reduce your commitment should your organization's needs for the cloud reduce as well, right? Maybe you're going into maintenance mode, there is more of a decline of your cloud usage. The savings plans cannot follow that decline. You need to utilize those convertible reserved instances. And that 20% mark gives you a good buffer, because if you reduce your cloud spend for more than 20%, over a 3-year time period, something fundamentally bad would be happening to your organization. Maybe you're going out of business or something like that, right?
Yes.
But for all practical purposes, that 20% buffer will help you to make adjustments as needed should your cloud spend get reduced.
So I must say this has been an interesting conversation, and I'm sure, like I, the other listeners would have also known the lesser known facts from you. Thanks again, Dieter, for taking out time and sharing your experience and a perspective with us.
Of course, thank you for having me here.
On that note, I would like to close this conversation and look forward to unraveling some of the new developments in the field of FinOps in the coming months. Stay tuned for more information from the FinOps thought leaders as we continue to explore ever evolving landscape of cloud financial management. And if you have any questions, would like to join the conversation, feel free to reach out to CloudKeeper. Thank you and have a wonderful time. Bye bye.